Yeah. Ooh, I learned which one this was.
It's not the break there anymore.
Welcome.
That was a lot louder than I thought it was going to be. If everybody could take their seats, we can get this party started. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to use the microphone tonight because I've been talking all day and I'm not used to that. My throat hurts. I think they were words, I'm not sure. Courtney, are you in the house? Courtney? Hopefully our second speaker shows up. If not, I can give you developer horror stories or something. Awesome.
Just in time for Halloween.
That's a great idea. I love this. Love it. Actually, that's our backup plan. We'll do developer horror stories. If Courtney does not show up. Awesome. Welcome to Denver. Woo!
Wait, Denver? Where are we?
DenverScript. I do that at least every other month. I swear to God.
He just likes that conference so much.
It's such a good conference.
It's great.
If you missed it, sorry. Next year.
Tentative dates for next year.
We do have dates already?
That's tentative.
Tentative.
Yeah, same time of year, middle of August. So,
Tentative, middle of August for Develop Denver. But fuck that, you're at DenverScript.
We have them. I can't tell them to you. It's in the middle of August.
Shush.
Hey, if you hadn't said the conference name, I don't know what's happening.
Well, I screwed myself on that. All right, these things are not possible without our sponsors, so we want to thank you, Co-Talent, for sponsoring the venue, which means it's the building you're in. So if you're in the job market or needed, yes, if you're in the job market or need to find someone for a job, contact them. They're great people. Go Spot Check. They are sponsoring the food. So, Go Spot Check is a software. Yes, I am reading off a script. Yes, I work there. I just want to make sure I don't mess it up. Go Spot Check is a software designed for the mobile worker in mind. They use our app to complete surveys, audits, to gather real-time information to confirm the desired activity or condition being met. That's where I work. It's fun. Awesome. Also, we're an open collective, which means we take donations as a nonprofit. So thank you, Garrett, Connor, and where's Ian?
Yo.
Yeah. Yo. They are recurring contributors every month. So this money goes to things to help us run the meetup. Which like our meetup account costs money. Like if sponsors cancels on us and we need money to support for food or drinks, create swag, whatever. On that note about meetup.com, has anyone heard about Meetup's diabolical plan to totally screw everything up?
Yeah.
So for those that do not know, they are rolling out right now a beta program to some meetups, not our meetup, but some meetups, that would charge you, the people, $2 per RSVP. Done.
Greedy.
Yeah, if anything, it's like business suicide. So I have a feeling they're going to not do that. But in that case, we're already going to start looking at other potential platforms to host the meetup on in case they do something really stupid. But if you have ideas for platforms or ideas, like we've already come up with ideas with like Twitter accounts and like, retweets is your RSVP or something, like we'll think of something. But I see one head right there in the back shaking his head, no. Wait, to the Twitter retweets or no? We'll find something else.
Hi, Gerald.
What?
Free code cancel.
Ah, yeah, that's right, they are. Which was a great announcement right after Meetup was like, hey, we're gonna do this. And they're like, we're gonna jerk wads, here you go, here's a free platform.
It's open source. Yeah.
Well, so what's going on in JS land? I think that's the first thing.
So what's going on in JavaScript land? Chrome 77 came out. Not a ton of super exciting stuff in 77. So I only just went over some of the highlights here. As always, if you're interested in reading through the more detailed release notes, they're there. The highlights video with the things we're talking about and code examples is also linked. All of this stuff, including the things that you submit and suggest during our conversation right now, will be added to the conversation on today's Meetup comment thread. So don't feel like you need to memorize or take pictures or write everything down. First thing, this one is actually pretty neat. Element styles can now be copied from the DOM inspector with a right click. So let's say you're focused on a specific DOM element using the element inspector. If you right click it, you can click copy styles. And then if you paste anywhere else, it'll paste the output for you of every style being applied to that DOM element. Yeah?
Is it the computed properties or is it percentages?
That's a great question. Find out and comment it in the thread after this. No, but the cool thing though is that it's not only, it's not only like the sort of most specific or lowermost like ID or class, like normally the ones that are shown at the very top of the CSS attributes when you're looking at them in DevTools. But it's anything being applied to that element, including any ones, and this is actually really helpful, and they kind of only glossed over it in the example. If you're modifying the CSS, right, and you're adding classes or changing stuff or doing whatever else, you have it exactly how you want it. When you copy it and paste it, it includes all the things that you added as well. So a pretty cool way, once you've got it looking exactly how you want, to be able to paste it and look at all those things. Visualizing layout shifts. This one's really neat if you actually look at it in the video to see an example of how they do it. But basically, if your page or one that you're maintaining, you notice that the DOM elements shift around because you have like ads and things, which if you do, that sucks. But if you do, and those come in and you don't know the size that they're going to be, and if you don't, that sucks. But if you don't, right, then when that happens, as you know, the page shifts around, you can get a tool that helps you visualize those things that are shifting. And basically what it does is as things shift, it highlights them in blue as they're moving. So it makes it a lot more obvious, even subtle shifts that are happening because of things that are rendering later and moving stuff around. Audits panel, they always add new stuff there. If you're somebody that uses the audits panel a lot, I encourage you to go and see the actual specifics of what they're doing. DevTools, this is like a nice to have. If you have a dark theme on your OS, it syncs to your OS's preference and automatically switches to it for you in DevTools. So that's just not mind-blowing, but kind of cool. And then for those of you that are regular attendees, you know how much I like conditional breakpoints. They now added a shortcut for it. So yes.
I didn't interrupt you, but
It's all good.
I'm running native Catalina.
Okay.
And Chrome just keeps closing on me without doing anything, even if it's got no windows loaded. And Chromium does now too. Does anybody have any experience with that?
I'm on Catalina now. I'm on both of my laptops. I haven't had any issues.
Is it so? To repeat it.
Recommendation would be to completely remove and uninstall Chrome altogether and do a reinstall if you haven't already.
It wouldn't even start. Okay. Thanks.
You had the same problem,
On Firefox, Firefox just wouldn't even start.
and then what'd you do to resolve
I
it?
had to remove it and reinstall.
And then it worked when you reinstalled. Okay. Well, there you go. Just unplug it and plug it back in. So, anyway, so conditional breakpoints, I'm a huge fan of. If you're not, you should be too. They're really great. But now, instead of having to right-click on the left-hand side there and say like edit breakpoint or whatever else, if you just click anywhere on the line that you want and you do Command Option V on Mac, it'll actually open up the conditional breakpoint dialog for you. So that's a nice little helper. Yeah, like I said, not a ton of stuff in DevTools. There are some other things, but those are the highlights. So that's what I'm excited about this month in JavaScript land. What are you guys excited about? Yes?
Firefox 70 was released today.
Sweet.
With like a whole bunch of slew of improvements now. Running better on macOS, specifically macOS.
Awesome.
Did you say 70?
Yeah.
70.
Firefox 70.
How did that happen?
I don't know.
I remember 36.
Yeah, maybe they just went from like 36 to 70. Just to
Oh,
like,
they did the React.
yeah.
We go from 0.0123 to 13.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. What else are you guys excited about? Yeah. Vue 3.0. Any cool stuff about it specifically that you've heard that you're excited about?
There's a lot of claims about speed.
Yeah.
So it's finally out of beta? It's out of beta now?
I'm not sure it's that big, I'm sorry.
Doesn't matter. That's cool. But you heard about it's coming along and
Yeah, fighting about it.
sure.
Top level weights.
What's that?
Top level weight.
What about it?
You can use a weight at top level imports now without being inside of the sync function.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. Sweet. That's in browsers.
Anything with V8 and Chrome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. And now everybody's starting to use Chrome under the hood anyway. So, awesome. What else are you guys excited about? And this can be anything. Like we always say. So for those of you, how many first timers we have here, by the way? Oh, okay, sweet. So yeah, as usual, about half and half. Fantastic.
People definitely come back though.
Yeah, no. So half of them come back. That's a good sign.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Cool. So for those of you guys that are first timers, don't feel intimidated. We're having some really good suggestions about things that are very much language level, like big broad things going on. But also just as relevant, any high five moments, any things that you guys were excited about. Doesn't have to be a new thing, something that you just personally worked on that was kind of exciting. Yeah.
Not a high five.
Sure.
I can feel excited.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that everyone at my job finally understands how awesome Zish is in Superior Bash.
Yeah.
Catalina update.
You go to hell, sir.
Catalina update. Everyone's rocking Zish now.
I would call it
Unless you
didn't want
disable it like I did.
even though you didn't want to, I would call it a high five moment.
Actually,
That's
Zish is the default term.
So along those lines, what about it is that you're most excited about? Like, what about Zish? So for those that have not heard of it, like, what's your favorite part about working with Zish?
Oh my Zish. Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna do 5 whys then. Okay. So what about my Zish?
wait, hold on. What do you call that? Bash.
Okay.
It's so it's the default shell now with the Catalina update because Bash has been using a shell from like 12 years. Yeah, I mean like because of licensing things.
Okay.
And so it's really behind. But Powerline 5K is a great place to start.
Okay.
Powerline 5K, great thing to start off with. It just makes it easier. It just makes it a lot easier. Yeah, it comes with a bunch. All my Zish comes with a bunch of great aliases for you to work with. But for me, it's just comes with a lot of shit that I don't have to set up manually in Batch.
Okay. One more thing I'm excited about. Our second speaker is here. Yay!
I don't have to make something up.
No, we're not going to make some up on the fly. Fantastic. What else? No, it's all good. You're fine. Yeah.
This question, is that why making each equal, is that why I had to reinstall Xcode to connect it?
Sure, dude.
That was like permissions model. To use a permissions model. Okay, because I was like, hey, I updated Catalina and now I can't make a git push.
No, it's just a stupid thing that Mac does.
Okay.
It's all good. Let's all go back to
So this is a great example. It doesn't have to be new. Doesn't have to be mind-blowing. It could be a thing that you're working with that either, a bug you fixed, a framework you just started working with, a new thing that your team has been adopting, anything that you're excited about that you think that you want to share. What's up?
It's not really JavaScript specific, but JQ, it's like that JSON processing tool. Like I was on that, finally dug in and using it a lot. It's probably old, but it's really useful for making sense of really messy JSON responses.
Sweet. What's your favorite part about it?
Yeah, it's the same thing as all my Z shells. Like readability.
It's like just beautifies it all and indents it all for you.
Yeah, and just targeting very specific things that are really nested, really quick.
Yeah, awesome. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just
Super great for CI/CD stuff too.
Yeah.
Where you have to do JSON responses.
Why do you say it's because they're so
You
deeply
just do the
nested?
command line without having to go into it, shell into it.
Oh,
JavaScript.
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Recently started generating JavaScript. Generating some core types. Like our backend has a bunch of stuff that's fixed, right?
Mhm.
And people add to it and stuff. Keeping the same thing JavaScript adds.
Mhm.
So we just wrote some tools that just auto-generate the whole thing in JavaScript. Now I said right.
Sweet. Any particular tools that you use to do that you recommend?
So our backend is Go. We just use some basic built-in stuff, some additional stuff.
Okay, awesome. What else?
I got one.
Please, Matthew.
Am I in trouble? Recently, we've been working with Protobufs as our API contract, which then generates both the Go and TypeScript services. It's fucking mind-blowing. And uses gRPC Web, which if anyone hasn't used gRPC Web, anyone know what I'm talking about?
A few minutes.
No, that's more than I thought.
We
Because
generate our Slider docs with it.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like gRPC Web, like instead of returning JSON payloads, it returns binary. So the payloads are super tiny, but then because of the Protobufs, it generates you a function that will take that and generate it into a JSON response for you. So like the payload's super small, and then you have one function that just makes it into JSON.
Oh, cool.
It's bi-directional too.
Awesome.
Right.
It's pretty neat. Anyone else? Yeah.
So I just figured out Lodash.
That's the best.
I was trying to treat it with Webpack by structuring imports,
Mhm.
and that doesn't actually, but I guess it doesn't work. So I figured out that you got to import the function like at Lodash / instead of destructuring it. So
Really?
actually destructuring the Lodash stuff, it wasn't actually doing anything.
That's interesting.
Yep. I don't use it anymore because of that now.
Try to get rid of it.
Well, yeah, one of the things that we ran into with that was that if you, even if you try and do the individual imports, if you use a Lodash chain anywhere, chain under the hood brings everything with it. So it's like, despite your best attempts, kind of thing. Yeah, that's cool. I'll chat with you about that after that. Because we were doing the destructuring as an attempt to like start the tree shaking. So you found that then.
Yeah, it doesn't. Apparently that doesn't do anything. You have to
Interesting. Cool. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
I'm just amazed how many libraries have TypeScript types. I just started working with TypeScript like 5 years ago. And like React image crop, some weird library has a types library
Yeah.
for it. I just like I'm surprised
It's
by
really
that.
catching on.
Yeah. So,
Let's
Pretty
do,
much anything distributed that will be TypeScript.
all right, let's do one more. Yes, way in the back.
We just implemented Storybook 5. It's been pretty awesome. Pretty helpful for putting the project work together, and it's been super fun to develop.
10-second pitch for the group on what Storybook is.
Storybook is a component library that is accessible for designers, but also exportable for engineers.
Awesome. Super cool.
use knobs.
Huh?
Use knobs.
Great, awesome. Well, thank you all for participating. So one of the things that I always try and say is, so like I said, we're going to post all this different stuff on the meetup comments. But raise your hand if you participated during this. If you like said something. Come on, don't be shy. As long as you raise your hand. Yeah, great. So if you see like roughly about half the people in the audience, or at least a third, all like had something to say, right, and contribute there. We have a lot of really good people in this community that like know a lot of cool stuff and are working on a lot of interesting things. Unfortunately, we can only do 1 or 2 speakers a night. So please, I encourage you, if you heard something that was interesting, that is something that you're working on or something you want to learn more about, we have time after our speakers. We always kind of hang out anyways, and feel free to chat with each other and share some of that information. So great. Thanks, everybody.
And I'll post these in the comments tomorrow on the meetup, just so everyone, and like, I know I typed some like very generic shit in there, so I will actually go research, like give you links for what it is people are talking about. So don't worry about having to research yourself. Sweet, job announcements. If you have a job announcement, please come to the front, take the mic, and name the job. I'll go first. I work at Go Spot Check. We are hiring a full-time front-end position, mid-level, as well as a full-stack developer, back-end or front-end full stack. Yes, there's a difference. But if you're looking for either one of those, please come talk to me.
Hey, Casey Berg. I'm a principal engineer at a new startup called Stackhawk. We are building security tools for developers, and we are looking for a lead UI engineer. So all things JavaScript, working with our usability people and building some awesome stuff. Please come talk to me afterwards.
Yeah.
And Sam brought stickers.
And we got some stickers.
An avatar.
Oh, avatar.
Oh, yeah, you'll get a sweet t-shirt. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kate Boyd. I'm an engineer and designer at Thorn. We are a nonprofit that builds technology to defend kids from sexual abuse. So we're hiring an engineering manager for a brand new team, brand new project. I'll be on your team. It's going to be awesome. It's a big new project. It's going to have a big impact on the whole way like law enforcement deals with child sex abuse. So big project, looking for a manager. Come join us. Or come talk to me if you have any questions about Thorn in general.
Thank you for doing that. Whatever that is. Seriously.
How's it going? I'm Matt. I'm a front-end engineer at a place called Ombud. We're hiring for lots of roles: QA engineer, lead engineer, DevSecOps engineer, full stack, which means like Node, SQL, and platform developers. So come talk to me.
So front-end full stack.
No, back-end full stack.
There's a difference.
There's a difference.
Sure.
Hey, also, anybody that did job announcements, please make sure that you post links to those or information on them in the comments section on the meetup page.
Sorry, first thing that comes to mind when we say full stack engineer.
Yeah, that's the best.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful horse. Right on. Okay, first talk is Phil Lux.
We still have pizza left and a lot of beers, so let's get set up. If you want to use the restroom or do either of these things, please do.
Are we trying to finish it up?
Yes. I don't know what you're asking about, but yeah.
Finish off pizza or beer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the beer, I'll be impressed.
Right. Well, you're not going to finish either with that attitude. You're still sitting there.
Just study what you're doing.
Oh, and Chris said you were going to Chris said you were yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Pretty sure. Yeah, it is like this. Wait, hold on. Hold on. Why out there to oh, it's sort of like
Who's ready?
It's better than me yelling.
This is not bad.
Are you ready?
Phil Lux, everybody.
Thank you for the warm reception. Today I'm going to do a short talk on conditional component rendering, and really the concept here is who's owning the logic. Is it the parent or the child? Real quick about me, I'm a front-end dev at SnapEngage in Boulder. Been there for about almost 4 years, and you can get a hold of me if you find this interesting afterwards or during this talk as well. So real quick, this topic I got inspired a couple months ago during a pull request review where I asked a question, and essentially the question is, why are we waiting so late to, why are we starting so early on requesting the request to local storage? Why are we not letting the child understand what's happening here and the parents in control? So we just had some discussions, and I thought I would bring it on board to others. So I'm hoping this presentation is more of a approach-based. It's not saying that this is the way you're going to do it. It's more about, here are some ideas to put in your toolbox, and maybe you'll appreciate them and use them one time. And hopefully there'll be some discussions that we can have if there's enough time. So quick recap, I'm gonna base this in React, because that's what I work in day out. Conditional rendering, officially from React, says use JavaScript operators like if, else, or the conditional operator to create elements representing the current state and let React update the UI to match them. So basically what they're saying is use one of these, and this is copy and pasted literally from them. So item number 1, we have a ternary. Item number 2, we have a double ampersand operator, and number 3, just a regular if block. And as you can see, there's like a lot of code just to do something simple. And can you imagine that logout button was like multiple different components? It can be a lot of extra impact on the eyes, cognitive overload sometimes. So there's also an unofficial alternate, which is a conditional component, where essentially you're passing in a Boolean that gets checked inside this if component, and then you have render props to return the actual component if it is not a false condition. All right, so the question here is, like, if you have a component with render props, why not just call the component and let it do the same thing? So this principle of least privilege came out from one of my senior developers. He's super smart. I've been very lucky to work with him. And he forwarded me the link where the principle of least privilege essentially boils down to, it's a particular abstraction layer of a computing environment that every module, such as a process, a user, a program, must be able to access only the information and resources that are necessary for its legitimate purpose. And if you pause and think about that, it kind of is saying, why should the parent know or care about when the child renders? It's going to call a component one way or another. So with conditional rendering, we're letting the parent component potentially know too much about how the child itself is implemented. And I thought that was just a really interesting thought that I literally had not made before. I was like, oh, the React docs say do it this way, so that's what I'm going to do. And that's not, yeah, you're not opening your mouth. So here's a link. I can forward it to anybody who wants to read the full wiki. All right, so parent ownership. It does have some advantages. Like, it's great for scaffolding, where you're, maybe have this, am I going to show like a mobile optimized or a desktop type layout? Or, it's still one-way data flow. You're still going to end up passing props to the child, and there's going to be no, when parent owns that conditional rendering, there's not going to be any like life cycle triggering of that child component. So in this case, as we saw, we're going to say if logged in, we're going to render the logout button, and the child itself just takes the other prop and handles it. There's no dependency or anything. Like, it's pretty much straightforward, very clean cut. But the question that is begged to be asked is, does it make sense for the parent to control what happens? And have you thought about reusability of your child component? And how do I know if there's dependencies inside the child if the parent controls it? So, this animation is still double on that. All right. So what about if the child owns it? What if we take what we just saw, where the parent is in control, and we flip it around? In this case, when the child owns it, it's really, really explicit about what it needs and what it does, and if there's dependencies. Returning null from a component is not a bad thing at all. That's what the docs say to do. And the logic is going somewhere, whether it's the parent or child. So maybe it makes sense for the child to own it. So in this case, we're going to flip it around. We're going to, from the parent, we're going to pass in the isLoggedIn prop. And in the child, if it's not logged in, we're just going to return null. Okay, that's not so bad. And otherwise, we're going to return an HTML markup. And reusability. It can be easier to implement a reusable component if it tells the parent to mind your own business. The code should be really, every code you write, whether you're doing a conditional rendering or anything, it should be really explicit and not implicit. If you have to be implicit, you're thinking too much. And you want to be consistent also. So in this case, we could have logout button rendered with code 3 different ways. But what parent 123 could also just do this one simple line every time if you have a good API inside that logout button, of course. And that's much nicer to look at wherever you go. So what about testing? Everyone's favorite, test all the things, right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so how about your time?
All right, so in this case, we've stepped up the code. This is very contrived, I know, but we're going to use one of the hooks, use effect, and that's one of the things that is obvious. What about if I'm doing a data fetch, or what if I need to do something when the component is called? Why, I don't want it to do it. Well, we can easily watch that second argument and watch is logged in. So we only do your effect set name or fetch to your API if logged in is true. So otherwise we'll still return null, and otherwise if we are logged in, we're going to do the set name and render the correct variable. So to write the test, really easy. We can easily, without having to find your element and click on it and change your state, and then therefore it pops up. We just know that if I pass a false prop is logged in, this is not going to exist. It's going to be null. But yet, if we pass in the true prop, we now know that my data test ID, this is using React testing library, is going to be there. So testing where your component controls its destiny is much better. So a little quick summary, parent control pros and cons. This is a list I made up. I'd be curious if you guys had any feedback. So some pros, larger scaffolding, only the components run only when it's absolutely needed. It does make sense when you look at the code. If this, then that. Cons, that the parent has that privilege. And but sometimes you can have like multiple conditionals and you have two things you have to check, and you're doing this, or else we're going to do that. It just gets messy when you do things like that. Again, explicit, very important. Versus child control pros, it is explicit. There might be some more extra lines of code in that component instead of being outside the component. Some people might think that, well, why would I want to create an instance of the component only to return null? It's bad for performance. I think it's probably majority of applications that's not going to impact you. And it's a stronger API, truthfully, so it's easier to test and reuse. Cons, there's more lines of code. You kind of feel like you're waiting to the last minute to decide if this component should be rendered, and it might feel like it's less performant. So that's my 8 minutes. The main thing is always do what's right for your application. And yeah, what's your experience with doing anything like this? And again, apologies, no gifts today. So.
So Craftsy, way back in the day, we had a pattern similar to this, but we called it bad pair just didn't hear what the child was doing. Just curious if you've named the pattern yet.
There have been no names. Yes. The child, bad parent having to do that.
So you were talking about the importance of being explicit versus implicit, right?
Right.
What like explicitly declaring if you're going to like render something or not, like that's clear, right? But like, so when you mean, what do you mean by like doing it implicitly, right? Like, what would be an example of like of it being implicit?
It's not. Yeah, that's a good point. I guess explicitly in the child component, if you're saying if I don't have this, it's not going to work. Like you're being really explicit, where somehow that component could be reused, and yet that prop is missing because they didn't know that it needed that dependency of is logged in, and therefore that component is not. It's being explicit about what its true requirements are. Like let's say you didn't have an if this prop is true, then I'm going to fetch that data. Let's say somebody tries to reuse it and it just fetches the data, but I'm not logged in. Right? It's going to fail. So that's where the implicit versus explicit comes in.
So you said that the child method might be less dependent.
It felt that way to me. I'm like, why are we waiting all the way to the end just to return null? Like we know if I'm logged in the parent. So let's just skip over even creating an instance.
Oh, so it's only for really returning null.
Right. You're doing this check. You're creating an instance, but just returning null. And then it's kind of going away. So that feels less performant. I think still how fast it is and how performant JavaScript is in this kind of using React, it's not going to make them. I'd be surprised if there's a large impact, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's not a big deal at all, right?
No.
Yeah, I felt that too, and wondered if you had any thoughts on now that everybody just posts, you're setting all your effects while they're on top of the render. You're still organizing those, and you put them all in return before each effect, and let your screen touch.
Yes,
So
right.
do you have experience with that?
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to show here is that you just watch your, you can't see my mouse. Okay, great. You just watch in your dependency array is logged in. And then you have to wrap what you're doing inside. So we're going to watch is logged in, and only if I'm logged in will I do this effect here. And that's how you get around it. So it's a little more verbose, but it's really like, you can't mess this up. I'm sure.
You haven't seen
Just want to add a little note. I want to just caution people talk about feeling performance issues,
Right.
Versus actually measuring performance issues.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of people on my teams that are going to pass through that trap, like, oh, I'm going to do this way because it's going to be more optimized without actually measuring what if any is going to do.
Yeah, no, you're
So you end up with like convoluted things. Maybe measure first, then
absolutely. Yeah, measure first. Yeah.
Pre-optimization is the root of all.
Yeah. Or as a counterpoint, don't measure at all, and then worry about it when it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
That's the climb.
Right. Yeah, so what do you guys normally do? Just like curiosity, mixed bag or?
it's a lot less code.
Say again?
It's a lot less code in view. Like if you just put like a component and then like they have these things about view directives where it's like you type in b-if equals and then whatever the condition is.
Is this in the parent or the child?
Whatever it is, like it could be any element. It's like that's one of the areas where I actually like to do more semantics.
Well, yeah, this is like, I think when you're in your component, if you have literally HTML markup, like let's say there's a div and an input, you only want to render the input if this, like that's a little different because it's actual HTML versus a component itself. I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
I'm just figuring out the
Yeah. I think they need talkers for one of the upcoming events. Yeah. Speakers, not talkers.
We have plenty of talkers. We need a couple speakers.
All right. Well, we'll put him on the spot, but thanks for.
ready?
We may have pizza left. We definitely still have beer left. So feel free to do another round if you can set up. But you're here. Oh, here.
We were both up here, we're like, oh.
No, I would never
Also, all right. Gonna get this party started once again.
I didn't do that part.
But before she starts, because I had to ask her, who knows how to say that framework?
Svelte.
Wow, more people.
I don't know. I've been saying it wrong then, because I'm gonna call it Svelte all night. I'm
That's what it's supposed to be called.
So it says in the
No,
dictionary.
it's not. They're Schultz.
What's the
Don't
answer?
speak to Schultz.
So I I haven't been to DenverScript in a while because I worked up in Boulder. It's really hard to get back to Denver for anything fun. But I'm back in Denver now, and I came to an August DenverScript meetup. I was talking to Mike, and I was like, dude, I really want to do a talk. It'd be really cool. And I think it was Kyle who mentioned Svelte at the very end of that meetup. And it was the second time that week that someone mentioned Svelte to me. Right now I'm working on an AngularJS app, so I'm like back in the dark ages. So I was like, ooh, that sounds really cool and exciting. I want to learn some things. So that's why I decided to present on SvelteJS for you guys tonight. So just a little bit about me. I actually presented when I was in boot camp because MYOB is a good guy. And I say that because anyone can come up here and give a talk. It's not a big deal. I don't know a special amount. I've been working in this for like a year and a half. It's just a matter of wanting to share what you do know. So part of the point of this presentation is to teach you about Svelte, and part of it is to convince you to come up here and share with us. So you guys are all really smart. Okay, so this is Svelte's homepage, and I'm going to use this as sort of a guide to my talk tonight. The first thing we're going to talk about, what is it? Svelte cybernetically enhanced web apps. That sounds interesting. We're also going to talk about how does it work under the hood. It claims to have no virtual DOM, which we've all been sold on as a great idea. And it says that it's truly reactive, which implies that the frameworks that we're using are not truly reactive. So let's look at that. I'm trying to figure out why everyone's so excited. Maybe it's writing less code, maybe it's other stuff. And then the last thing is, I don't want you to just leave here having listened to me passively. I used to be a middle school teacher for a lot less time than Guillermo was a teacher. And I want you to go home and do something with this. So I'm going to give you some ideas for how to get started with Svelte at the end. Okay. Now, things are. Okay, so talking about Svelte, we need to talk about this guy because he is the one who started. Does anyone know his name?
Svelte.
Rich
Hot pocket.
Harris. Rich Harris. And when I first saw the picture in the top left,
Yes.
yeah,
I never saw it till now.
yeah, it's beautiful. So he's a super quirky guy, and I stalked him on LinkedIn, and it turns out it's because he's from London. He went to University College London, studied philosophy, and then he worked at The Guardian, which is a huge news outlet in England, and he was transferred to New York City, it looks like, and now he works for the New York Times as a graphics editor. And so when I saw this on LinkedIn, I was like, why the hell is this guy making a JavaScript framework? Like, I write this stuff all day, and I don't have the energy to do this after work. So I did some more stalking of him. Oh, this is just not going to work. So what it turns out, he's very active on Twitter, if you want to learn more about him as a personality or as a person. And so this is one of his most recent projects for the New York Times, and I'm actually just going to take you to this website. So it's sort of an intense article. It actually has to do with online child sexual exploitation, but I want you to watch this animation. Oh, come on. Yes. Holy shit. And they've anonymized all the photos, and they're all just layering in here. And so we actually have another really, I think these are really beautiful. Like, look at that. You can see visually how much bigger the problem is. This is how many images and videos were flagged. So, okay, that kind of makes sense actually. That's why this guy is making a JavaScript framework. He needs to make stuff. He needs to make stuff that's super fast. Okay, super fast. Lots of graphics, heavy graphics. So that's why he did this. The only other thing that I want to say about Rich Harris is that he gave a talk on rethinking reactivity. And his purpose in making Svelte, which I was also like, why does he think he can compete with Angular and React and Vue? Like, they already do a great job for web development. He is actually thinking about the embedded web. So these are some of the devices that he was developing for. Smart TVs, point-of-sale devices, car navigation systems, things that aren't going to have the kind of bandwidth that our browsers do, which is interesting. I didn't realize that. Okay, I got a little bit distracted, but the last thing I want to say that's kind of cool before we go into the what is Svelte, does anyone know who this guy is? I didn't notice, so it's okay if no one knows. Okay, William Gibson was the guy who invented cyberpunk as a subgenre of sci-fi, and that's why they decided on this new tagline, cybernetic in Clubhouse. I looked that up because I thought it was really weird. Okay, here we are. This is why you guys are here tonight, because you're flirty fucks, okay? And the second a new JavaScript framework comes out, you have to know about it. Let's take a quick look through the timeline. What I'm working on.
You should not date a 1 month old JavaScript.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't. We'll come back to that. So I'm working on AngularJS from 2010. React came out a couple years later. Vue came out right after that. And then Angular 2 Plus came out the same year that Svelte came out, the first version. They released Svelte 2 in April of 2018, and they just released Svelte 3 in 2019, just for some context. I started Googling for this because I was like, I'm pretty sure it's that framework. Svelte is not on this list because it turns out Svelte is not actually a framework. And I feel like this was a brilliant marketing thing that Rich Harris maybe meant to or didn't mean to do, but Svelte is a compiler, and he said that after they started advertising this framework. It's a build step. So you have HTML, and you have CSS, and you have JavaScript, and you have lots of these different files. Svelte is the black box compiler. It really turns it into effectively 3 files. You have your index HTML, your bundle of CSS, and your bundle of JavaScript. And these are just, I'm just going to carry this around. So these are the lines of code that the project that I made to prep for this talk. This is what they compiled it to. So the index HTML is 18 lines, it's really tiny. The CSS was a bigger file, even though it was 11 lines, because it put it all on one line, I think, for each component. And then the bundle.js, if you'll notice, is huge. It's 5,000 lines. So basically what Svelte does, it takes all of the stuff that you write in vanilla HTML and vanilla CSS and vanilla JavaScript, and it compiles it into JavaScript, which is where it is truly reactive, or that's where it makes that claim. So let's look more about how this thing works under the hood. This is going to be an audience participation portion, and this is just my opinion of looking through all the documentation and using this app. So you guys are going to count down. Are you ready?
We're gonna say 10 on the count of 3. 3, 2, 1.
10.
Okay. You don't have to install any dev tools. You can just use the regular browser dev tools. Pretty cool. 3, 2, 1.
9.
There is built-in accessibility support. This would have been really helpful in my last gig where they cared a lot about that. The company was based in Canada and there were laws around it. 3, 2, 1.
8.
There are 4 built-in animations and a bunch of built-in transitions, which is really nice if you're just trying to get something built. You don't want to make all those by yourself. 3, 2, 1.
7.
There are a bunch of useful event modifiers. Does anyone use Vue and know if they have this in Vue? They do? Okay. I didn't notice this when I was using Vue, but I thought this was super cool. They also have stop propagation and prevent default and stuff like that.
They're lazy.
Oh, they do? In Vue? Nice. I don't think so. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
6.
You can pass in props with the spread operator. So you can either define like 20 different props if you're going to do the bad parent thing, or you can just ... and pass them on and have some defaults waiting for the child, which is kind of nice. 3, 2, 1.
6.
So handlebars, and I feel like a lot of libraries after that have used double curly braces, but Svelte, it's just such a small thing, but they switched to 1, right? You only have to write 1 curly brace. It's like 2 less keystrokes every time you want to render JavaScript in HTML, which is really sweet. 3, 2, 1.
4.
Single file components. We had this in Vue. Fucking loved it. Script at the top, style at the bottom. Unlike in Vue, you don't have to have the tags for the HTML. You just throw it straight in there at the bottom, which is really nice. And it keeps your code really clean. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
3.
You can have multiple elements at the root. I remember seeing this and being so excited. I think it's a dorky comment. But you can't do that in Vue, and I'm fairly certain you can't do that in React. You can in Angular.
Vue 3.
Vue 3, okay, cool.
And Angular.
And Angular, okay.
And Angular.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's really nice. Like, sometimes I don't want to have only one element at the root. Stop telling me what to do. 3, 2, 1.
2.
All right. Component CSS is scope by default. This wasn't true in the Vue version that I was working on. You had to. You're killing me, dude. You had to add it to every piece of CSS. We ended up building this huge app with global CSS everywhere, and by the time you got to some of these child components, you're importing things. It's the same shitty CSS problem we had before, but now it's like in these files, you can't even figure out where it is. So this is a paragraph. It's horrible, but it's nested inside this, and because this is scoped, it's clean. It's beautiful. All right, last one. 3, 2, 1.
1.
This is my favorite part. And this, I think, maybe takes care of some of the parent-child things. They have a weight baked in as like an HTML element. So I remember writing a bunch of terrible if-else statements like, if data is not loading and the data has a length, then show this thing. And all of this other stuff, you don't have to do that anymore. This is really nice. So that, I thought was really exciting. Okay, those are kind of like developer niceties, and then just big picture, you can use this. It is a build step, right? It's a compiler, so you can use this with Webpack, but it ships with Rollup, which I added a bunch of slides at the end of this and decided that it's a little too technical, and frankly, I think it's kind of boring. So if you want to go back and look at my slides, they're all at the bottom, just kind of what the Rollup is, because they don't, like, raise your hand if you've used Rollup or heard of it. Okay, I didn't think it was super common. So yeah, feel free to check that out. The last thing I want to talk about real quick in terms of how it works is the store. And this is from the Svelte website. They have this awesome tutorial, which I'll try to sell you on trying at the end. And one of the sections they have on is on stores, which is how they do state management and reactive JavaScript variables. So we are just going to real quick do this one together. You can see we have this counter component, and we've got our decrementer, and an incrementer, and a resetter. And here's our store. And because we want this value to be writable, we wrap it in a writable. I'll come to questions at the end. Sorry?
You make it bigger.
Oh, sure.
Enhance.
Okay. So let's start with incrementer. If you want to increment the count, first you import it from stores.js. And remember, I just showed you this, but it's a little small. So you have to import writable as a function. and then just wrap that around whatever value is and export it from that file. So it's pretty easy. I can see how this would be a mess, so you maybe have to have multiple store files to do things for components, so something to think about. But you take count and you just do update, and you add 1 to that number. Well, we should see now, this is, I think, automatically refreshed. You know?
So you're in the reset.
Sorry, what did I do?
The reset apply.
Ah, okay. Thanks, thank you. Live coding, so stressful.
Hey.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's say we want to reset it. We're not actually going to use the update. We're going to use set, and we can set it back to 0. So we'll try all of that again. Oh, hey! And just so you know, I'm not lying. Like, the negative button doesn't work, okay? And now we're going to implement it. What should we type?
Set.
Yeah, exactly. Ah! So, not too crazy. Oh, this is terrible. And it works! I thought it was nice. That was like pretty sleek. Like I said, I think you could get crazy if you're doing, I'm sorry, a bigger app with lots of storage that you need to do. Okay, I'm like not even sure I should show you guys this. We're going for it. I made a terrible, terrible website to figure out how to use Svelte. So if you want to look through the repo that I made, it's in the presentation notes. This is really just their tutorial, but in an app that I made. And it shows you how to do a bunch of really basic stuff. And also there's animation. Hey. Okay, I definitely ripped that off. Okay. Architect credit. Third to last section, how we doing? Cool, okay. Let's talk about why everyone's super excited about Svelte. I've tried to tell you some of the features of programming in it that I like, but I'm just gonna go really quickly over the positives and negatives. I've tried to be objective. I told you I'm working in the ancient past of web development, so I have no skin in this game. This is not my baby to defend. What are the positives? It seems like you would ultimately write less code for a lot of reasons, which would make it easier to maintain and theoretically less buggy, right? Less lines of code, less bugs. It does seem like it would be fast, and this is maybe something worth debating, and I think this is the case that Rich Harris has to make to get people to adopt it. Is virtual DOM diffing not fast? Like, we have been sold that as a concept, but if you think about it, if you have to do the diff and also update the DOM, how could that possibly be faster than just updating the DOM? And you can watch one of his talks, which I'll recommend, that sort of goes into the details of that. But Svelte is very fast, and it is measurably faster than a lot of other frameworks. It compiles into standalone vanilla JavaScript modules, as you saw on the compile slide that I had. It's mostly JavaScript is what it compiles to, and it ships to the browser like that, which means you can throw some breakpoints in it and debug it that way, which is really sleek. You don't have to use plugins for your framework, so you don't have to use Cool Calendar React. You can use generic plugins because it's just JavaScript. Some people would argue, I read an article or two, that it's good for beginners because you're just using pure HTML and CSS and JavaScript. You don't need to learn JSX. You don't need to learn these state management libraries or anything crazy like that. So if you're teaching, you have junior devs on your team, good. You can Vue, and I'm sure you can write a whole app, or you can just do independent components and add those in. And I thought it was surprising. I've never used Storybooks, but I get their emails. I really want to try it. And they integrate with Storybooks, and they're also obviously backed by New York Times, because Rich Harris works there, and GoDaddy, and some other big names. So those are the good things. These are real negatives. I'm not trying to sell you on this. Some people think it's not production ready. So at my last company, we did release a Svelte app into production. But I think the next bullet point about the fact that there were breaking changes in Svelte 3. So you could run Svelte update and it wouldn't update everything. You still had to make some manual changes from Svelte 2 to Svelte 3. To me, that feels like a pain in the ass. So that's why I would maybe not run out and write your website all over again in Svelte. TypeScript isn't supported. I know that people vary in their opinions of TypeScript. Maybe you love it. If you do, Svelte's not there yet, but it is on their list. They don't have an officially supported router, which is unusual. I think all the other frameworks do. So you're sort of on your own.
It's not a framework.
Yeah, so it's not a framework. It's less opinionated. So you get to choose your own router adventure, and there is a really interesting discussion on one of their sites. I think I've linked in the notes. And finally, you don't have the same kind of documentation. So if you run into weird edge cases, you may be the first person to have discovered it. So you have to log a bug. You're not going to have a workaround. Okay, last section. How are you going to get started? I am really into snowboarding, and so when I was teaching, I would break this down for my kids. You can choose your own homework, okay? You can do the easiest thing, you can do the medium thing, or you can do the hard thing. But I would encourage all of you, go play with this when you get home. Some easy things you can do. There is a free tutorial. I showed you a little bit of it. It says it takes about 1.5 hours. It took me a little bit longer. But it's really cool, and it shows you what's under the hood. It shows you the JavaScript output, which I think is nice. There's also a REPL, which we can look at. It's kind of the same thing. You don't have to download anything. You can just play it here, and it will show you what's being outputted in JavaScript and what's being outputted in CSS. It's kind of cool. And then there's a 30-minute video that I referred to earlier about rethinking reactivity, virtual DOM diffing, actually faster or not, which Rich Harris talks about. It's only 30 minutes. Go watch this tonight. Okay. Intermediate, you can read an article comparing your favorite framework to Svelte, right? You know your framework really well, and so someone's probably written a comparison that will help you have some greater understanding of that. You can fork and pull in the starter template. I don't think we need any more to-do apps, but tic-tac-toe or Pong would be nice, okay? And then Rich Harris made this really interesting metaphysics and JavaScript talk for the SvelteJS meetup group in New York City in August. And his slides and his notes are hilarious. So if you want to read through that, I think it's also a good medium challenge thing to do. And if you're a super developer, you can use Sapper, which is their server-side rendering version that uses Svelte, to make a project. I've never done a server-side rendering project, so to me, this is like really scary stuff, which is why I put it in advanced. There's also a Udemy online course. It's about 12 hours. If you want to get really into it, see maybe it's something you guys want to start working with. And then you can also contribute to Svelte repo. They have 350 documented issues that need to get worked on. So you got time. Okay, for the last part, because I'm not really an expert and I really don't want to be put on the spot with technical questions, I have also just been up here talking and you haven't. So I want you guys to answer some questions for me. Raise your hand if you've used Svelte on the job. Okay, cool. No problem. Has anyone used Svelte for a personal project? Oh, wow. Okay, this is going to be quite a discussion.
You're doing great. You're the expert.
You're the expert. Yeah.
That's terrible.
You're the
Have you looked at Svelte ever in your life? Okay, talk. What do you think? Am I bullshitting everyone? Am I telling the truth?
I didn't get past the homepage.
Okay.
So
What
I was
happened?
like, that's neat.
What else?
But it's kind of an interesting premise. However, I think the thing that pulled me that personally trying to is that it has the same problems that every other JavaScript framework has with regards to reactive data types, which is if you're replacing objects or raising things like that, you can't do that. You have to use whatever custom special thing in order to modify inside of things. So to me, like every like nothing doesn't go properly as you have to use special update to change data. That's kind of
Okay, that's fair enough. Did anyone else feel that same pain point when they were working with it? Or something different? Okay, interesting.
Sorry, I'm thinking back to my handlebars.
Yeah.
Yes, in a way. I couldn't use await promises in handlebars.
that's
Yeah, that's a very interesting.
Do you know the last great thing that came out of the New York Times?
Huh.
Mike Bostock, D3.
Oh, yeah. D3 library's pretty good. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see how it competes with concurrent mode in that. It is
Okay.
faster technically, but it doesn't optimize for what things to render versus others. So yeah, it'll just be interesting to see how those two compare.
I don't know concurrent mode in React.
It's coming. It's not actually implemented.
Okay.
It's a-
Comes with suspense, right?
Suspense is an actual thing.
Yeah,
So
Wasn't trying to come to that.
I mean, that's sort of what I was envisioning because this is all I know.
After hearing this, honestly, I feel like most of my work started on that. It's all my questions. So like, I don't necessarily know where the phones are. Unless I'm missing something, like usually it's like getting user into it, turning it, throwing it back. What do I say?
You have like a store with tons of updates, updating multiple components at the same time because of what's happening. That's where little things supposedly can make a difference. Yeah.
My general idea is that most of the work in my line business kind of apps are the same. Unless I was actually sitting at a computer and round trip between the servers and that big of a deal. But this guy is working on like New York Times interactive articles that are read by people on their 3G phones kind of thing. And that's what the size of
Interesting.
I interviewed at T-Mobile not too long ago, and they have their own browser to render like what the TV guide is on your box. You can Google it. It's called like a set-top box browser. I forget what it's called, but it's based off of. I think it's based off of Chrome.
Is that right?
Garbage.
But
It's not that a cable left yet.
well, no. But basically, that's what they build on. Like that's what they build on. It's a browser. It's a JavaScript app, but it's super lightweight.
Super low power ARM devices that are.
Well, the problem is also these set-top boxes. When you showed the devices that this was designed for, like it's a hard device. Like it's not just a browser, so it ships and it's kind of stuck with that thing almost.
I see.
I forget the
Set-top
box browser, web browser.
That's
Set-top
what
box.
it is.
That's it. No, but there's
Is
a
it
browser.
the
No, there's
browser
literally
for
there's
that?
software
Okay.
for set-top boxes.
I'm having trouble finding it, but I
Set-top
can
box
definitely
web,
keep Googling. What else? This is dangerous.
Okay, so
Yeah.
your number one, which was the top level bonus support,
Mhm.
and the top level weight. So I didn't see any way to invoke that promise in the example. I don't know if you could
That's
maybe, like,
fair.
screen back
Yeah.
to that.
Let's do it. I'll pull that up. Everyone else keep talking. What do you think?
Yeah.
I think store management is far clearer than Redux.
Even Vue I thought was pretty straightforward, but you have to like add a store and remove a store, and you can't have multiple instances of the store on the same page. Why you have to do all that? This seems really sleek, but maybe it's because it's so small scale. They're willing to be skeptical. It's a one-page app. There's not a lot of data.
You have an example of what the compiler code looks like?
Yeah, I can show you that on GitHub also.
That record will show you too.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, which is really nice. Okay, what was I looking for? Thank you. Okay, it's in here somewhere. Keep looking. While I'm doing that, is anyone gonna give a talk up here about anything? Raise your hand if you're like a little bit more excited to give your own talk. Yeah, it's really fun. This is a really, really
I saw some
generous
like
crowd.
halfway. I want to see them all the way up.
I'm sure they're always looking for people because they let me come, and I didn't even get here on time.
So November.
We talked about these
I
products.
can't see.
Think about
Yeah, I got a
While
text
she's
message
looking,
later.
We
Sorry.
moved this meetup a week up because of another conflicting big Halloween death party. But we're also thinking about moving next month up a week because it's the same week as Thanksgiving. So that means probably not many people will show up if we don't move it. So I think that would be November 19th if anyone would be interested in talking. I haven't officially moved it yet, but definitely something we're thinking about doing. So if you're interested in doing a talk, please hit Gary, Mike, or myself.
Would you like something?
Sorry, hit us up. Oh, hit us.
You can hit Matt, but hit me up.
It's a loop.
Fair enough.
Okay, so
Would you like something on pure.js?
I found it. Got it.
Hey, you can do
So
whatever you
you're awaiting the promise. It's defined up here by this get random number function. So I just like ripped this out of the tutorial. And you've got a fetch in here, and you've got the text that you're waiting for. So, and it also has some of its own error.
want. You should come back.
Yes. I'm not gonna lie, part of why I glossed over that is because I didn't really want to understand it yet. So if anyone wants to give a talk next month on what's in here, that'd be really great.
Doesn't it obfuscate it?
Stuff. Some things. Oh, look at that, one letter variable, it's really fun. Yeah.
Oh, so it's just
This
more
is
like a
nice.
simpler one?
Okay. Yes, sir.
So while she's pulling it up and adding to what Matt was saying that he kind of glossed over, a week from today is the annual Develop Happy Hour Halloween costume party. And it is, so it's like a little costume party, it's only developers. And it's like just a spin-off of the normal monthly Develop Happy Hour. And it's gonna be at Casa Bonita 1 week from today.
All right,
So,
who has not been to Casa
Oh my
Bonita?
God. Yeah, you gotta
All
go.
right. Eat before you go.
yeah. So if you like other developers and you're mildly interested in costume parties and you feel anywhere from neutral positive about Casa Bonita, you should definitely come. It's like a really fun time.
Still gotta pay to get
Thanks. So I guess, okay, if I was gonna try and describe
Is that the one
this,
with divers?
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. How did I leave that out? And you want to like drink cocktails and watch cliff divers jump like in the middle of the restaurant, dive into like very small lakes that apparently are very deep. You should go.
You get all my
Here we go. Is that helpful? We got some notes, and we got some C,
no ops.
and we're detaching, and hey, we made a Svelte component. This is just for Hello World. Hey. Yeah.
Is it only go to ES 2015 and beyond, or can you set the configurations for like different, like is it stage 1, stage 2?
I don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
I think I
I'm just
remember
curious.
reading something where they're like, we don't care about you, Internet Explorer, which I love and respect, but I don't know.
I guess
I don't
it
know
uses
about
webpacks.
Webpacks, so you must be able to use Babel, I assume.
Okay.
Well, if it uses rollup, you can use Babel as well. It's just they're both compilers.
Maybe someone could talk about rollup.
That sounds like a good talk for next month.
Hey, come see these guys. Okay, beautiful. Thank you, people.
Thank you.
Awesome. That's her second talk. So come on, people, let's get those talks in. That's our last talk for tonight. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice now. Thank you all for coming out. We still have some more beer.
We still have cold pizza.
There's a microwave. Feel free, drink, nerd out, and I think we just gotta be out here by 8, so 30 minutes. So
Yeah.
cheers.
Thanks, guys.